Welcome to Empowered Within, a soul-quenching, transformational podcast that will set your soul on fire through candid and inspiring conversations. Leading experts, celebrities, healers, and I share our journeys of how we've overcome challenges to living an empowered life from within. I'm your host, Jennifer Pilates. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Within. Hi there, and welcome to today's bonus episode. I recently had the honor of being interviewed on the podcast Mind, Body, Spirit 365 with host Tim Smith. We talk everything health, fitness, and how to live aligned mind, body, and spirit. I hope that you enjoy this interview. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's bonus episode.
Does God really care about our fitness goals? Does he care about what we read, watch, listen to, and what we eat? I'm Tim Smith, former minister, coach, and Weight Watchers leader. Join me every week as we explore how we can use God in our daily routines to accomplish our physical goals while honoring and deepening our spiritual life. Welcome to Mind, Body, Soul 365. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I am Tim Smith, your host. I hope everyone is having a great day. It's a great day here in Oklahoma. And today on the podcast, we are happy to welcome Jennifer Pilates to the podcast to talk about just that, Pilates. And we're also going to talk about how to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul, and how all of that kind of works together. Jennifer is an expert. She's an empowerment coach. She's a mentor. She's a host of a top-rated podcast called Empowered Within. She is a celebrity trainer having to do with Pilates health and fitness expert. Jennifer has been training and transforming clients worldwide for over 20 years as a celebrity trainer and advisor, as a coach and mentor. And like I said, she has a successful podcast herself. She is a very detail-loving, stubborn-as-heck achiever. And I must say, getting to know her on this podcast a little bit and talking to her, I think you're really going to find her refreshing. You're going to find her straightforward, give you a lot of great information about how we can take care of our minds and our bodies and how she helps people do that every day in her training. She's also an entrepreneur, just a really good person, really good interview. It was great to talk to her. She's just a very good person, very passionate about what she does. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. I am glad you're here. I have been looking forward to this conversation with you ever since I have been reading your bio, looking at your webpage. So I'm excited. So getting started, tell the listener a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you kind of got into what you're doing now. And we're going to dive right into the Pilates aspect of it here in just a minute, but kind of give the listener a little bit of your background.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. So I am Jennifer Pilates. I specialize in empowering you to be you. That is my goal. And through that, I do that through empowerment coaching and mentoring. I do that through Pilates virtual training, as well as my Empowered Within podcast. And the goal and the mission is to help people align with themselves, find empowerment within, and be able to spread that love and light throughout the world.
I love that. And I just, when I was thinking about a conversation with you and all of that, it just jumped off the page at me that you are also giving back. You are a person of service and you're giving back. And I know you came to the Pilates world because of traumatic car accident that happened. So would you go back to that and explain how how the Pilates came about because of that?
Yeah, of course. So that was back in 1997. And there was this one beautiful day driving home from work. And, they always say you never see it coming. And I did see it coming. I looked in the rearview mirror. There were 6 lanes of traffic and I saw the car barreling towards me, nowhere to go. And so I was rear-ended and ping-ponged between a couple of cars there. So there was a lot of internal soft tissue damage from the base of my skull down through my tailbone area. It was very traumatic, and more so when you look back, right? I think when you're in a situation, you're in shock, you're in survival, flight or fight mode. You never realize exactly how traumatic something is because your body, your mind, your spirit is protecting you from that. And so it took a long time for me to understand exactly what was transpiring during those times. I had been in the corporate world, climbing the ladder, and suddenly thrown into doctor's offices anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day. And you name the doctor, I was seeing it. The blessing of all of this truly is that it happened in Boulder, Colorado. And at the time, it was the mecca of alternative care. And so that's something that I didn't really experience prior to that. So craniosacral, massage therapy, acupuncture, chiropractic care, special neurology, you name it, I was going through it all. And at some point, the pain just wasn't going away. And it was pretty intense. I was on medication and, it was not helping. And so the chiropractor at the time, his suggestion was something called Pilates and referred me to a woman who happened to specialize in it, in rehabilitative care for Pilates. So it was such a blessing in disguise to meet her, to find Pilates. And from there, I rehabbed with it for 2 years and it truly changed my life and really taught me what coming inside is, finding the body, mind, spirit connection. Not always easy, not always fun, and not always happy, happy, joy, joy. Yet there's so much growth to be had there. And that's where the true essence of living is. So I'm so eternally grateful for the gentleman that hit me, for the instructor who at the end of my 2 years of rehab said, you should really go to school for this. And ironically enough, through the payout, a little bit of money that I got from the car accident, it covered all my medical bills. And there was a little something extra, and it was just enough to go to the Pilates school in Boulder. And I know, Tim, you and I don't believe in coincidences. So it was, it was very divine, timed out. Everything was planned out. And, luckily I went with the flow and it truly changed my life.
Yeah. And I have to ask, because Pilates is something that I know a little bit about just from reading about some pro athletes that have used Pilates to strengthen, to do what Pilates does. And that's my question. Tell the listener why Pilates helped you at that certain time in your life to get through the pain and to help you. And also, why is Pilates different than some of the other things like yoga or stretching or those sort of things that we've heard for a while? Why is Pilates different?
So we'll start with what it did for me. I can remember going into the studios, being in pain. And for a lot of my pain really was at the base of my spine, my SI, which is really painful for anyone that's ever had any sort of L4, L5 sciatica issues. And I can remember going in one day and getting on one of the machines, which was called the Reformer, and lying down and was going to do something very basic called footwork. This wasn't going to take a lot, but it does. It takes a lot to connect your mind to your body and to just be in that moment. And in that moment, tears just began streaming down my face. And I began to understand the connection and the release that was going on because I had been holding on. I was so scared for so long. Seeing all these doctors, all of this, there was all sorts of things going on. My job was changing because of what I had been through, and I was living cross country from family. So there was a lot that was transpiring. It's never just one thing. And so in that moment, I really experienced when you're willing to go within, and that's what Pilates brought to me in that moment. And I see that time and time again with clients when they're willing to come in and be vulnerable and embrace and go into their body and allow their body to be vulnerable and release, that's when the greatest, most amazing moments of healing truly transpire.
So does Pilates work on the joints and the muscles and all of it? Is it a strength movement or a flexibility movement? What exactly does Pilates do for the individual physically?
So Pilates works on strengthening and lengthening your muscles versus constricting and bulking. We also, in the Pilates practice, work from your core outward, because the belief is that even though you may come in with, say, a pain in your hamstring or in your shoulder, we can be aware of that. And then through that, we know what other ailments may be off. And that's why, as good practitioners, and myself, I also specialize in rehabilitative care and Pilates, we start from that core and we work outwards, because there's going to be other alignments from just what you're feeling, because there's going to be other things that are taking over to help out. So usually if you come in and your left hip is off, then I know there's something off with your right shoulder and then something in your neck. And there's all these alignments that we can go through and, compromising. Like there's always something else that's compromised. And so that's why we start from that core and go outwards, so that we can find the other hidden ailments and release in other ways, versus a lot of times when you go to other practitioners or therapies or something, they're only going to target that what's happening. Right? They don't necessarily always go to the core, literally and figuratively speaking. And that's where someone like myself or another Pilates practitioner that particularly specializes in rehabilitative care, that's that difference. We're really we love to get to the nitty gritty. And Pilates in general, for even a healthy individual, when you come in, we're working the innermost muscles. So when we're in a traditional setting, say the gym, you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you see your body. That's what you're working. You're working what you see. When you are in Pilates, we are working the innermost muscles. So you're automatically working those outermost muscles. So I like to call it a 2 for the price of 1, right? Because let's be clear. Who really likes to work out? Tim, come on. Right? No one, I mean, do we like it? Yes. But do we want to have to do it all the time? Not necessarily. So if you can find something that can strengthen and lengthen your muscles, that can help you release stress, that can help you release tension in your body, align the mindset, and allow you to potentially even grow taller. Oh, by the way, because I did increase by 1/2 inch through my Pilates practice. There's just so many wonderful attributes and benefits. And the incredible thing about it is that anyone from the age, I always say like 8 to 88. Of course, my oldest client was in her 90s, but it's truly safe for anyone, because you're working with your body's weight. And that's very hard to overdo. Now, I'm not going to say you can't do it, because Tim, I have faith in you. But ideally, you really can't overdo it. And between the Pilates equipment, which there's, numerous pieces, or whether you're working on the mat with just yourself, that, you're working with you and you're coming into alignment with you. And when you empower yourself, again, empowering yourself to change yourself, not relying on someone else.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it tells me a lot. It also brings me to a question. So if you have someone who is basically lifting weights, they're doing some aerobic stuff on the side, basically they're burning calories, but they're basically trying to bulk up, wouldn't it be an advantage to that person to not only do the weightlifting, but also implement some Pilates work to strengthen or to lengthen the muscles, like you say? But is that going to hurt the muscles that you're wanting to bulk up? That's my question.
That's a really great question. So the idea is that Pilates is an incredible complement to any exercise that you may be doing, whatever that may be. It's not going to inhibit or decrease the size of a muscle. If anything, it's going to allow you to go further and deeper and to a more strategic place and a healthier place for building that muscle versus, again, what you just see in the mirror and you're judging by looking at it. Because a lot of times when you do that, you can look at the healthiest of an individual who may be lifting these weights and has incredible biceps and shoulders and all that, but maybe they've got a torn ligament because they're working on what they're seeing. But when you do add in that complement of Pilates, you're building from the inside out. So again, it's a 2 for the price of 1. The other great thing that not a lot of people know about Pilates is that it's very fat burning, and it burns fat for 24 hours after the fact of a session.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive in itself.
Yeah. The other question I've got is, because I do have a reference to a couple of baseball players that I know turned to Pilates, and one right off the bat, he just retired, was Jake Arrieta, who pitched for the Cubs and was a Cy Young Award winner. And the year that he won his Cy Young Award, he actually brought a Pilates machine into the clubhouse with him. And he had posted some videos of his Pilates workouts. And I mean, he was an amazing physical specimen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he had to retire because of an injury, but he gave credit to Pilates in lengthening his career and actually enhancing his career because of the Pilates. So my question to you would be, why do pro athletes, and you mentioned earlier in our conversation, you mentioned a guy by the name of his last name is Brady. I think his first name is Tom.
Tommy boy.
Yeah, who I have his jersey hanging in my closet.
Oh, so do I.
Yeah.
I might have a few.
Well, but and you had mentioned that he was a closet Pilates participant, but knowing, I've read his book and I do follow him. He's completely into his body and his health. So why have they embraced Pilates, do you think? Because this for a fact. I grew up in a era where a pregame meal was a steak and a baked potato, which we now know was the worst thing that you could eat because it's not digested until 3 or 4 days after you eat it. But I also grew up in an era where we lifted weights. I didn't, but the guys that lifted did. They lifted weights, and I didn't lift weights not because I thought it was wrong. I didn't lift weights because I was lazy. But I was an athlete, and I will say that I was successful. But that was what I was told. You lift weights, you get stronger, you bulk up, you build muscle. You don't do any of the, I've never stretched in my life, really. So why now are they embracing Pilates, do you think?
Well, I like to think that people have grown. So it also goes that for years and years, we've also been programmed to believe that just working 9 to 5 and giving it our all and no pain, no gain. We've also been told all those things were right, when in fact, the complete opposite was true. So that makes you wonder. All of these gentlemen, and they've been doing this for years. I was actually pulling up a list here because I had a list of teams who have had Pilates equipment in their clubhouses, in their studios for years that no one knows about. And for me, the first ones I always knew about was all the hockey players. They were well into it before anyone knew. And then the MLB, and then it really felt like the NFL really jumped on board after that. And golf has always been on board. Tennis came in there as well. So, we really branch out through each one. But the key is that these gentlemen knew, and women knew and know, that when your body is flexible with strength, you can do anything. When you are tight and you are constricted, not only are you limiting your abilities to do your work, you're running on the field or whatever it may be that your chosen careers to do, but you're also prone much more to an incident, to a dis-ease, to a tear, to a ligament here, a broken something there, because everything isn't working as one big solely happy family and all the muscles aren't being supported. So when you've got that portion that's supporting you around you through that Pilates aspect, it just takes on a whole nother life itself. I always loved when hockey players would come in. One of my favorite studios, and I've had them all over on the East Coast and out West. My favorite one was on Cape Cod in a little town called Osterville. And a lot of NFL and NHL players were there in the summertime and MLB, but the hockey players predominantly would always come in. And there was nothing better than watching this incredibly talented, amazing man come in who is, on all appearance, looks amazing, right? Looks strong. That's what we're seeing when they're on the ice or on the field or so on and so forth. And being able to have them crying for mercy in under 10 minutes. Like that, there is nothing better than that. Because in that 10 minutes, you've brought them to another place of appreciation of life in their body. It's not about me. It's about me saying, let's really get into your body and let's see where it's going to go. And that's when the light bulb goes off and they're begging for more. And they've drank the Pilates Kool-Aid and they can't get enough of it because they know how important this is for their body, for their career, for their life after their career. And 9 times out of 10, the other part that I loved about working with these guys is they would ultimately bring their wives in too. And so they would do dual sessions, which I thought was just fabulous that they were sharing that.
Yeah. And you did find joy in bringing them to tears. I can tell that, but you did enjoy that. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I still do.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that. I wouldn't like that, but I can understand why you would. I mean, I would try to hold back the tears as much as I possibly could.
Right. When you can bring someone to that quaking place in their body that maybe they've never been or they haven't been in so long, in doing something so minute, right? Because you're working those innermost smaller muscles. And it's just a whole nother world and appreciation for the body and wanting to see where else it can go. Yeah.
So if I'm looking for a Pilates studio and I'm a complete novice beginner, the only thing I know about Pilates is what you're telling me right now. Yes. I'm a beginner. Do I need to worry about not knowing anything about Pilates when I show up? Are they going to throw me on a machine and say, you know, what should I expect? Mm-hmm. I know every studio is probably different, but
every studio is different. Every instructor is different. What I would say as being, if you're a brand new person and this is something that you really want to try, what I want you to be not worried about, but what I want you to be cautiously optimistic about is the trainers in the studio. And what are you looking for? Because just like any other practice that's out there, you're going to have your drive-throughs and then you're going to have your really great studios with really great instructors. And so if you have any ailment, I encourage you to research the instructors and make sure that they have a specialty in a rehabilitative care. And we're out there. There's tons of us out there. With that, generally, a very good studio will recommend that you start with private sessions. And that is to get to know your body, what's best for you, and to help introduce you to the equipment and also make sure that you're really going to enjoy this. Because if it's not going to be something that you're going to enjoy, again, you have to listen to your body and what's going to resonate with you. And so most studios, I find, will run a special for usually 3 private sessions because I always say that's our courting time. And at the end of 3 sessions, you're either in or you're out. And that's okay either way, but you also have a really great taste at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And so either you're so into the Kool-Aid or you're like, maybe not. 9 times out of the 10, you're so into the Kool-Aid, you will continue and you may continue with privates until you're ready to go into a class style setting. And that's okay too. It's what you prefer. And also depending on what ailments you may or may not have.
Yeah, I can see the benefit. Just knowing what I know, just visiting with you, I can see the benefit in myself. Why I probably need to do that. So thank you for the information, and I will keep you informed. So,
of course.
Now I'm going to go back to your injury because I'm always curious as to what a doctor may have or may not have told you, because I'm really concerned about a person taking ownership in their own health care. And I don't think a lot of times we do that enough. We don't ask enough questions. We just take whatever they tell us, and that's what we do. My mom and dad grew up in that era. The doctor was the expert. You don't question him. Mm-hmm. You just do what he tells you. Okay. Right. So did you ever have a doctor tell you you're all, there's just nothing I can do for you. You're always going to be in pain. You're always going to be on some type of medicine or under some type of medical care. There's just nothing. And you just sat back and said, no, that's not I'm going to figure this out. So did you ever have a doctor, or did you have doctors because you were in Boulder? And I do know Colorado is just, as far as fitness and energy and all of that, exercise, their heads above everybody. I think that's why the Olympic Training Center is there, which is phenomenal.
Exactly.
But, what was your experience with those doctors, and how did you walk in and take ownership of your own health? Okay.
Right. Sure. So I would say it's a little all over the board, and it really depends on what doctor you're talking to. And so when I go back, and it's a really great question, because honestly, like, I'm sitting here really thinking about this. And my first thought is, I was told I was in a car accident. I was told that I didn't have any broken bones, that I was going to be sore, and that I had a concussion. No one talked about soft tissue damage. No one talked about an SI. No one talked about, so that's gets into it further. No one talked about 10 days later what really happens when you have a concussion and what goes on. And so there's layers to it. And when I think back to the doctors that I had, I was extremely blessed, because this team, which was a huge team of doctors that weren't even working together, they were just working together on me. They were all really supportive and really good, to the point that I always remember this one doctor telling me, you don't live in your body. And so that's how deep they went. And that was way before I even understood what those words meant. And they were very correct on that. So they were very supportive. And I would say out of that, I have learned to be an advocate for myself, because I always knew, like, this didn't feel good, or that didn't feel good, or do I need to be on medications? I mean, this gets light. I had doctors who said to me on one side, we don't care for the medications that the other doctors are giving to you. So they had me on something to help me, my neurons for sleeping, right, to re-regulate because of the concussion. And then there was something, I think it was to make the muscles relax, or for the pain or something. All I can tell you is that at night when I took these two meds, I would suddenly lay in bed and start giggling. And my roommate on the other side would then start. So for like 45 minutes there, we would just be laughing our asses off. And I mean, if you ask me now, I'll tell you what, that medication was freaking phenomenal. Freaking phenomenal. Now, would I take that today? No, I wouldn't. But divine timing, was that what I needed at that point in time? Yes. But my other doctors on the flip side had looked at me and said, we would much rather prefer you smoke marijuana. And now, while we're aware that you have asthma, we prefer that you use a glass bong. True story. Can't make that up. Boulder, Colorado. Now, you can imagine when I told my family this in East Coast back in 1997, what their response was. And so it was very interesting. I will say I did not go that route. I may have learned how to bake some really good brownies, though, during my years in Boulder. I will say that. I think there were times I was known as the brownie girl for a little bit. Yeah. But I appreciate, and looking back now today, I appreciate what those doctors were saying. I didn't quite understand it, but they were so far advanced from where I was that was, I mean, even down to the asthmatics and how marijuana helps asthmatics, and that's a whole nother ballgame. But it was quite incredible. But so I really always had doctors fighting and supporting for me. I think the only time anybody wasn't, it was the insurance companies. And I think that's still unfortunately true to this day.
That's a whole different argument.
Whole different podcast. But I was very well supported in that moment in time, in that situation. I was quite blessed.
Yeah. And you probably, because of your nature, you were going to be an advocate anyway. I mean, you were going to be your own advocate. You didn't, like you say, your family wasn't around, so you had to be your own advocate. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's a lesson that anybody can take into a doctor's office. We are our own I want to go back, though. I just stopped dead in that sentence because I want to ask you this question, because this light bulb came on. What did you say that doctor told you? You don't live in your body.
Right. He said, I don't live in my body.
Explain that. because
So,
that may be a little bit over my head, but you can explain it in a way I'll understand.
so I can explain it today. I couldn't have explained it then. And I didn't have the wherewithal to really go, well, what does that mean? Like, I think I just shrugged it off and was like, okay, like I should be more present or something.
You had
Like,
just eaten a pan of brownies that morning. So that's why when he said that.
No, I think those were only saved for like evening, maybe like
Okay.
a Friday or something.
Yeah.
So, but no, I would say if I looked at it now and that statement comes up to me every once in a while. And when it does, I know that there's something else that's rising to the surface that is going to clear, that I'm about to be triggered with something and I should probably hold on. So to me, what that means is growing up being an empath, being intuitive, there was a lot of not great traumatic events in my life from the time I was a young child. And so it's much more easier for me to jump out of my skin, so to speak, and not feel and not want to be present and go, la, 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 not doing, because of the behavior patterns and traumatic things that I went through being a young person. And so I know that now. I would have never, ever. And I remember when the light bulb went off, and honestly, it wasn't that long ago because I was in another situation where I was being triggered, and that came back into my head. And it's almost like that statement keeps coming back in my head to remind me to be in my body, to feel what's going on, and know that when you have something come up, you don't have to sit in it, but you do need to sit with it and allow it to go through you. You don't have to sit there and hold on to it and days and days and days. No. Embrace it, acknowledge it, and move through it and allow it to go. And that, again, I mean, honestly, we're talking, when you think about it, Tim, this accident happened in 1997. I'm still learning lessons from that time.
Yeah.
All the time.
So this would be great advice for someone who has had some things happen in their childhood, who they can't get over, they can't work through. And they may even blame who they are and what they are today on what happened to them as a child. So something keeps triggering something in their head that takes them back to that. So you're saying when that happens, to remove yourself, but embrace it. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Well, not really. So you don't want to remove yourself. So say for it, let me give an example. So right now in my life, I have a major situation going on where there is a doctor I may have to give up. And it's a doctor who has literally saved my life. And that's obviously very traumatic for me right now. And it's very real. And I have to sit with that. And I have to acknowledge the fact that I made him out to be God, and he's not God. He may have done God's work, but he's not God. And so I have to sit and go, why are you so afraid to think that there isn't someone else out there that can do what he's doing, or that there is someone better now that I'm being guided towards? Or, right? So there's all those triggers that come up, but all I know is, but that's the person that saved me. But then you have to go, but did he? He did the work of God.
Yeah.
And God works through many people. So to give a really heartfelt, like really compassionate, something I don't really talk about often at all, that's a great example. I have to sit here and go, wow, he was amazing. And I'm blessed at the work that he did for me. And maybe our time together is over and I'm being divinely guided to someone new. So while I grieve that loss, I still have to have faith in what's coming and not anxious and not in fear, which is nothing more than excitement without breath, or, what they say, fear of the unknown, false evidence appearing real. Who knows? I mean, I may get to keep my doctor, but I may not. So I have been preparing myself. And I feel like the lesson in that was knowing that I had made this gentleman out. Honestly, I made him out to be God, because to me, he was my everything, because he truly saved my life. So, I mean, that's the best way that I can explain it. I have to sit here and still be okay and know that, hi, the guy saved me. God obviously has more work for me to do. So, hello, girl, get your shit together and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's not always easy. And so my thing and what I want people to hear from me, honestly, being, your empowerment coach, coaches need coaches. Therapists need therapists. Pilates instructors need Pilates instructors. We're all human. And to know that, yes, we all have our off moments and off days. And here I am crying on a podcast, being that vulnerable, which is really difficult for me to do. For anyone that truly knows me, this is like very, very difficult for me to do. But in doing so, it shows that I want you to know that you can sit with it and I can be upset, but look at how I shifted that mindset here in this moment. And this is the best example by sharing my own vulnerability that I can give to anyone. And so if anyone takes this away and goes, my God, she's breaking down in tears. And yet within hopefully 60 seconds to 120 seconds, she's now walking through it. And it's not easy. And I'm still going to walk through this after this podcast, but it's staying in gratitude and staying in those moments and knowing that you're going to be okay. We've always been through worse. We've always been through worse, and God will continue to bring us where we need to go because he's clearly not done with any of us yet.
Amen. And I'll just add to that, just because of what I do and who I am, I would be remiss not to. One is, if your faith is greater than your fear, everything will be fine.
Amen.
But if your fear is greater than your faith, you can't do what you just did.
Right. It's paralyzing. Fear can be.
It is paralyzing. And I think that's what happens is when people are so fearful and they have a little faith, but they're fearful, they become very stagnant and unmovable, and they just don't do anything. And then that's when depression sets in. That's when a lot of things happen. The other thing is this, and I will just say this: God will provide, and he will provide if that doctor has to leave your life. I am just almost positive that can say on the next corner will be someone better and greater, because that's what you need, and that's what he'll provide. Right. So that's my 2 cents. So I'm going to change the tone a little bit. Okay.
I do want to add one thing.
Okay. Don't cry. Okay. Don't
cry anymore. No.
Okay. That makes me feel really bad on this podcast.
No, don't feel bad. But it's being so honest with everyone. Like, how else can I give you the best example than the hot mess that I'm currently going through, which is way more than I've chatted about, but just to give the tip of the iceberg, like that's a bit of it. Yeah. This does all go back to being an advocate for self. Whether it's in your Pilates practice, in you're looking for a therapist, in you're looking for a doctor, in accepting what someone says to you. And when someone comes to you and says, well, you should do X, Y, and Z, I want you to know that you have the right to say why. Is there something better? Is there another way? Is this the only option? No matter what that is, because there's so much out there that may or may not work or could work differently for you, or, so much, whether that's with you or your family or anyone that you're caring for. And Tim and I have talked in the past that my whole first half of my lifetime, starting from the time I was 15, was working in the assisted living industry and the retirement industry. And so I've learned to be an incredible advocate for self, advocate for residents and families. And I continue to do that to help people when you don't know and you just think the doctor's God. Like, I made my doctor God. Who am I to give him that complex? He didn't ask for that. Yeah. Shame on me, right? Shame on me for putting that on that man. And so I think when we can take a step back and go, oh yeah, well, wait, you know what? I don't like this medicine. That doesn't work for me. I'm telling you, and I'll give another example. I have a family member who also is going through some heart stuff, and we were chatting yesterday, and it was very therapeutic for us both. And he had said, I keep telling them this medication isn't working for me. You as a human being know your body, you know your mind, you know your spirit, you know what is right for you, and you know what doesn't feel right. Don't allow someone else to override what you feel. And know that your body is right. He was completely right. They had been screwing with him left, right, backward, sideways. He was right all along. And so I encourage you just to ask answers. It's not to be disrespectful. It's wanting to be educated and wanting to take empowerment for your life or your loved one's life or your partner's life or whatever that is.
Yep. I agree 100%. I think that is where medicine has changed a little bit through the years, is the fact that doctors understand that people are taking more ownership and asking questions, even, getting second opinions, researching doctors, finding the right doctor. And so I think you're spot on. I think you're exactly right. So I always ask this of people who are into fitness, they're into health, that sort of thing. How do you take care of your own self? What's your daily practices? What are some things that are non-negotiable for you when it comes to your daily routine? The second thing I've got, because I know this by just looking at your bio on your website, I have to ask you this. How do you balance? How do you have balance in your life, your spiritual, your entrepreneurship, your personal life, which is important, other than to watch Hallmark movies? We talked about that a little bit, but people have heard the podcast know how I feel about Hallmark movies. I love them. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what are some non-negotiables? How do you balance your life?
Yeah. So I definitely have some non-negotiables, and they start within the morning. One of the first things that I do is say thank you. When I open my eyes and I'm breathing and I'm feeling my heartbeat, it's thank you. Thank you for this day. How can I serve? And from there, I begin with a meditation practice and a gratitude practice and a self-healing practice. And from there, then I go into supporting my inner body with my lemon water. I love to have 32 ounces. I support myself with plant-based supplements that I have in the morning. Go for a morning walk, which is really important for me to clear my head and to begin my day. And we've talked about this before. For someone that works from home, which I do, it's important for me to change the energy field in my home from home to business. Even though I have a separate office, the door isn't really always closed. It's always open, and it's just it's just everything. So taking that walk allows me I practice another gratitude practice while I'm out there, and I'm saying good morning to the birds and the trees and the alligators and the ducks and my neighbors and the dogs, and thankful for the day, thinking about how I want my day to play out, manifesting how that's going to transpire. And then when I come back in, there's more water, and then it's like, okay, a little gratitude journal time, and then we're diving right into the day. So it's grown over the years, my practice. What I have learned in all of my years, over 20 some years, being an entrepreneur, being in the corporate world, is that where I once hustled, I now flow. Where I once guessed, I now know. And I think this goes nicely into your other question, which was about balance, which is difficult. I am a Taurus. I work from home. I have a lot of all or nothings. There is no gray in my life. I can't handle gray. I need black. I need white. And there are times where I struggle with balance. Again, I'm human. My food is definitely 80-20. I'm going to definitely admit here publicly that during the last 2 years, clearly I have become an emotional eater, which I never even knew about that. Altoids is something that keeps me very grounded. They're a non-negotiable I keep around. The peppermint keeps me very grounded. Having water grounds me. Doing my work and something, going back to my car accident years and years ago, one of my therapists, I think we'll call them at that time, had said to me, it is very important to have something on your calendar to look forward to. It doesn't have to be big, but you always need something. And not just me, people. We need something to look forward to. And I falter with that sometimes. I'll be honest. I falter with that, especially this last year. The world has been weird, right? Like, it's just everything's gotten a little humble jumbled. And again, being a Taurus, I love stability. I love security. At the same time, I have this adventure side where I just want to throw everything up and get in an RV and go. So I really have the double balancing act that, as for me personally, I really need to rein in and figure out. And so this podcast has helped this past year. This has been such an adventure, such a baby to be born. And, you know, I do, now that we're able to travel and do all that kind of stuff again, that has helped immensely because I love to travel. I love to go on a road trip or do this or do this. Or, you know, I would rather, people think I'm nuts, Tim. I would rather drive cross country than fly on a plane cross country because I want to experience the back roads and I want to see the people. And I just really love being on the open road. And so when I can put those things in my life for balance, that is super important. And again, I'm human. Have we not all gone a little batshit crazy this last year, 2 years, 3 years? So it's been a little bit more of a struggle than normal. Hallmark, we have a mutual love, Tim and I, for Hallmark, is definitely a savings grace for me and has been for numerous years now. I love the romance. I love the peacefulness of it. I just adore Hallmark. I cannot wait to have my own Hallmark movie one day, which I swear I will. It's on my manifesting board. Like, it'll happen. So it's the little things I can do. And getting back to, sorry, I kind of like just went all over the place there. Getting back to learning how to flow versus hustle. And coming from someone, again, who was brought up, you should work 9 to 5. I was the black sheep who became the entrepreneur and so on and so forth. When I take my day and I kind of block times, so I have times that I'll do interviews like this. I'll have times that I'm working with my coaching. And then I have times where like my mom and I are going and having fun. When I balance that, money flows to me. Clients flow to me. Life is amazing. When I stress, and when I'm worried about doctors or worried about paying bills, when I get in that state, everything strangles that energy. And I want everyone to picture this. Like when, you know, if you hold a bird, like you want to hold it very carefully and you want to caress it and be gentle. When you are holding that energy because you are just so anxious and worried, you stifle the energy. That bird might not survive. So we don't want to do that. We want to let go, let God, let the universe. And I know it sounds cliche and I know it sounds hard because it is. But when we can do that, everything flows to us. We're here to be happy, to be in joy, to have love, to service one another, however that may be. We're here as a community to love thy neighbor, do unto others as to what you want done unto you. Your thoughts become your reality. And so we don't want that reality to be icky and mucked up, right? We want it to be roses and flowers and unicorns and rainbows and all that good stuff and more Hallmark movies. Yeah. We just have to work at it. And it's a work in progress every day. And I am a work in progress every day. Clearly, look at this moment. This podcast is my therapy today. Thank you, Tim.
Well, I'll send you a bill. No, I appreciate that. And because a lot of times I struggle with balance, especially when I was coaching and trying to win basketball or baseball games. I just got so wrapped up in it and there wasn't any balance. And I think through maturity and guidance, help from God, I just know that, you know, balance is so important. And I think now maybe there may be too much of I have balance. I just have to make sure that since I am retired, that I still work. Mm-hmm. You know, I still have to have something to do. Thus this podcast, thus my I still minister and things like that. So, you know, balance is really important for everybody. I think it's really important that we who have lived through things, that's a great way of saying we may be a little older, and I'm older than you are. So we try to get those people who are now right in the heavy part of life, raising a family, starting a career, trying to provide that they understand that the quicker they get balance in their life, the quicker they do that, the better off they're going to be, because they don't want to look back. I know this is just me. I look back and understand I didn't have balance. I was not taught that way. You don't have, my dad, was a 7 to 5 for 70 years he worked. And so I learned that. So balance is important. Balance is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So
it really is. And it's little things for people that go, oh, well, that's great, Tim and Jennifer. Like, you don't have a 40+ hour job. You don't do it. I'll be honest with you. When you're self-employed and you work home, I work more now than I ever did when I had my corporate job. And I was required to work more than 40 hours. But it's something different when you love it and it's your passion. But it is also important to get out in the sun and to get out into nature and to take your kids out and have a PB&J in your backyard while your dog is running around. It's the little things. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but it's in those little moments that you will make the most incredible memories of a lifetime.
Yep. I agree 100%. And I also agree with what you said a while ago. I would much rather do a road trip than fly, because we have seen some amazing things. And usually if we get off the interstate highways, it's even more amazing. And I just, as a little disclaimer and commercial for the Florida interstate highway system.
Oh, God. We want to avoid Route 4, please, everyone.
I am not a fan of going through Orlando. Anyway, all right. I have to ask you, because you not only are a Pilates instructor, but you also do coaching. You help people through how to have personal and professional success. So why do you think that's important, and how do you help clients have success? I guess is the question.
I think coaching is so important, and it really developed throughout the Pilates sessions that I was having with clients. A lot of times those sessions were turning into therapy sessions, and it was beautiful while we were working out. And then sometimes all of a sudden it just became a, hey, can we just talk today? And so that's really, it was sort of like the universe again, like Nick, hello, before I even realized where I was being guided. So the coaching aspect of what I call it, and over the years, the empowerment coaching really tackles everything. Because when someone is coming to me and we begin to peel back the layers, ultimately we are covering both your business and your life, right? We've got to find, again, what you've been talking about, finding balance and finding that alignment within. And when we can find that alignment and we can find your passions and what isn't working so that we can find what can work for you and empower you to make those changes, then that is a ripple effect across all areas of your life. It really is so impactful. And I always tell clients, I always do a complimentary consultation, whether that's a new Pilates client or a new coaching client. And that, again, it's to get to know each other. Are we a good fit? Are we not? And I know pretty instantaneously, but I want to help you make that decision, right? Again, because we want you to be empowered from the get-go here. This isn't about me telling you what to do. This is about me with my tool bags going, okay, I have all these tools. Let's see what might help you as we build this incredible life that you are divine to live. And we've just got to get you to believe it and then remind you what makes you happy and your passions. From there, it's almost like anything can be yours. Once we get someone to that point, it takes some time. All of my clients in the first session have always had numerous aha moments. I feel like sessions with me, whether that is a Pilates session or whether that is a coaching session, it's like 2 or 3 sessions in one every time, because I am blessed to have my intuitive empathic side. So when you're coming to me, one, you can't bullshit me. Like, I can spot that a mile away. So I might let you start that, but I will call you out on that. And through that, we have growth. The walls come down. Okay, let's hit the pavement and let's really get to work here. Yep. And, I can really see past some of the triggers and blockages that people have a little bit easier than they can. And when I can help someone see through the forest, the angels show up, the horns are playing, and it really does help. And truly, when you can have someone align within themselves and they have that self-worth and that self-value and that self-love, they are successful and so empowered. Yep. So we really encompass all of that, honestly, in both the Pilates and in the coaching sessions.
Yeah. How do you know when somebody comes to you, how do you know that they really are sincere about wanting help?
in both aspects, I'll
Yeah.
know right away. So I never, again, it's that complimentary consult call. I will know in the first few minutes.
How do you
It's
know
just
that?
it's my intuitiveness. I can feel their heart and soul. I can feel what's coming through the phone. And I also know if it's somebody who is like, look, I just want to look really good for this event. And that's okay. That's totally okay. As long as you're honest with yourself.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
The reason I ask is I have a term that I either stole or I dreamed it or I came up with. It's called inspirational dissatisfaction. Mm-hmm. When we are so dissatisfied with ourselves that we are inspired to do something. Mm-hmm. And so when people come to me and they ask me, okay, I want to start running. What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? What shoes do I need to buy? I kind of look at them and, try to talk to them, well, first of all, why are you wanting to do this? If they're dissatisfied with where they're at to a point where they're almost angry with themselves for getting themselves in the position they're in right now. Right. I feel like they're probably at a pretty good point to make the pivot. They've had their 2x4 moment. And so, that's kind of what I see in people is the fact that they've got to be dissatisfied with where they're at to a point where they're inspired to do something about it.
Right.
And you can tell that.
Oh, yeah, very easily. Yeah, and that, again, that's a blessing of my empathic gifts. That's a true gift. And what inspires you. Pain, loss. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's all that stuff. You're finally just done. You're done with yourself. You don't feel good. So it's all those things that really motivate people. And it's usually written all over their face, if not through their words and their emotions, I find. Yeah,
I know it was written all over my face when I had to do that. But, okay, a couple of questions. I'm just curious. Why did you start a podcast?
When or why?
Why? Why did you think you needed to add something else to your plate?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't. God did.
Okay.
And it was, so that's the short story. The short story is that this was God driven, God mission. And I said, okay, let's do this. So it also came about in a really, again, another traumatic event in my life. Yeah. During the pandemic, during being here in Florida and caretaking. And I knew that our world was hurting and people were hurting and that I could make a bigger impact above and beyond Pilates. Like I felt like there needed to be something bigger. And I had never listened to a podcast. I knew what they were, but I didn't know anything about them. Nothing. Yeah. And all of a sudden, neither. I had nothing. And I had an opportunity. I was working with Tony Robbins, and through what we were working through, it came up, you're going to do a podcast. And not from him. It was from God. You're going to do a podcast. I bought the microphone. I put it on my desk, and then it was not now. Because there were things going on that I needed. But that was to look forward. God was saying in the middle of this, literally walking through a valley moment in life with my family, I'm giving you something to look forward to. And so.
I was just curious. I know why I started this one, and what has become, used to be a hobby or just fun to do. But I've enjoyed it so much because of people like you. I just learned so much. I mean, that's the great thing that comes out of it. And the name of your podcast is?
It's Empowered Within.
Empowered Within. Okay.
The mission is all about bringing inspiration and motivation and empowering everyone in this world that has the ability to listen to a podcast, bringing that love, that light, letting you know you're not alone in whatever it may be you're going through, and that we are a community and we are here. We are all one.
Yeah. And I really believe this, and you said it so well earlier, even you've actually proven it here today. When we're transparent, we learn from each other. Yes. When we are transparent. When we're not transparent, we hold things in, or we don't allow ourselves to be transparent. it's really hard to be helped. And I say that all the time. When we as a group of people here on this earth, God's children, when we learn to be transparent with each other, we can help each other. I mean, you can help me now. I can help you. We can help each other by being transparent. I know that. You can help people through your podcast, through your coaching, through your Pilates. I have to ask you this. Don't you do a Pilates virtually now? Do you do that? Okay.
I do. Yes.
And how can that benefit? I mean, is that something that, like myself, I can hook up into that and I can do the Pilates, because that kind of fits me to do that in my own environment here. So people aren't watching me make a fool out of myself. So how does that,
Virtual
how does that
Pilates
work?
Is great. It's so much fun. So right now I'm doing all private sessions. And so anyone can reach out. I'm building a virtual studio behind the scenes. But things like that take time. So right now everything is private. And so we schedule at a time. Ideally, someone is working with me twice a week. I'm here to help you get past pain or dis-ease or improve whatever it is that our goal is. Each program is customized to an individual. We set our time, we set our days, and much like doing this podcast, the difference is that it's Zoom. And I have my in-home studio, so the lights go on and the action begins and we start training. And every training session generally is very different. We're working on your body. You instantly, at the end of that first session, will feel improved posture as you're walking around feeling taller. You will be aware of your core. You will just feel just great. And then as time goes on, Joseph Pilates has a guarantee that he brought to his program, Pilates, which is in 10 sessions, you will feel difference in your body. In 20 sessions, you'll begin to really see. And in 30 sessions, you'll have a new Pilates body. And now, depending on the human being and what our customized program is, it will look different for each person. So is that body fat that's decreased? Are we decreasing pain? Are we improving mobility and stability and flexibility and sleep and weight loss? So for everybody, that's going to be different. But ultimately, your posture is improved. You've lost inches, which is usually the first thing that moves with Pilates. It's not your actual weight number, because remember, it is fat burning. So your inches, that's what I love. And the other thing that I think is super cool about Pilates is that you can take some time off. And when you come back, your body is like a sponge and just loves it and remembers it and just goes right back. So whereas, sometimes when you leave a program, I'm sure you've run into this, Tim, you get back, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm back in the grind again. With Pilates, your body's like, oh, thank you. And so excited to be back in it. So I really love the convenience of the virtuality of things. I love that anytime, anywhere, any place. So again, you can't BS me because I can be with you anywhere.
And I've got one more question. And I'm going to put some pressure on you because I'm just going to ask this. I thought this yesterday when we were visiting. When are you going to write a book?
I see you've been talking to God.
I know that has to be on your plate because you can't get a Hallmark movie until you write a book. And so if you write a book, you can almost script it like you would a Hallmark. But because you need to write a book. I mean, I'm not putting any pressure on you, but.
None at all. Yeah, it's funny that you should say this. So years ago, when I was living full-time in Arizona, right now I go back and forth between Arizona and Florida, I had a neighbor who every weekend at the pool would come down and say, did you write this week? Did you write this week? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, one day I'm journaling, whatever. And so I really poo-pooed him. And then fast forward, I have some tales to tell. There's no doubt about that. I have tales to tell. And even just through the podcasting, the journey here is just hysterical. So there are books with an S sitting here about on my desk. Something that I love to do that I encourage anyone who maybe doesn't like to sit at the computer or write is when I'm out walking, I will dictate into my phone. And then I come in and I can upload it and print it out and then just set it aside for now. But it's just there. So some days I might be talking about one subject. Sometimes it's another. It just depends. And I just kind of piece things together. And that's how it works for me. I know that's not how it works for my best-selling author friends. So there are books, and the Hallmark one, I will say it's interesting that you said that, because that goes along with a favorite topic of yours and mine as well, which is manifesting. And if I sat down and just finished writing that, then perhaps the movie would come to life a little sooner than anticipated. So you might have just motivated that real quick, Tim.
There you go. I'm glad to help, because sitting here listening to you today, I just thought there's a book on the horizon. So it sounds like you just need someone to put it together because it's already there. So anyway, and I look forward to that.
Yeah. There's a couple. There's a base. How do you say that? Based on, it's like fiction, but based on true events or something like that. There's one that I have to do like that, or it would.
And I'm now my interest is piqued at these tales that you are. Now my interest is piqued. So
I'm sure a lot of people's interests are piqued now that the cat is out of the bag.
Anyway, yeah.
Who's going to make it into what chapter?
And there's some people probably thinking, "Oh, I hope she doesn't write a book because I may be in it."
You know what I always say: if you're worried about it, you're probably in it.
So true. So true.
Right?
All right. So we've learned a lot today. Learned a lot about you, but you have given us so much information, and I'm so glad. We're going to bring this to an end. Before we do, though, I want you, how can people find you, reach out to you? Where's the best place for someone to reach out to you, find out more? Maybe they're interested in the Pilates sessions. They want to bring you on as a coach. How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. One of the best places to find me is on my website, which is jenniferpilates.com. And that will have all of the Pilates information, the coaching, as well as the podcast. It's an easy way to jump on that. So you can find me there, and you can send me an email, and I will get it directly. You can also hop on to Facebook or Instagram, and you'll find me under Jennifer Pilates or the Jennifer Pilates on Instagram. And the podcast is on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. So that's pretty easy to find as well. I'll be right next to Tim.
Well, and I'll have all that information on the notes that I'll put out on the show. So I always end the podcast the same way. And this is kind of it's almost funny that I say it this way, because I give the guest final words of wisdom that you want to leave the listener. And I usually try to shut up after that. But usually the final words of wisdom are so good, I have to comment on them, but I will try. So, final words of wisdom from Jennifer Pilates.
Great. I would say, if I can encourage and support everyone out there today, I'd like you to remember that you are very special. There is no one else on this planet like you. You are here for a reason, and you have work to do. And if you're unsure of that work, I'd like you to grab a pen, grab a pad of paper, walk outside, if it's warm enough, sit outside in nature, and doodle. Write down a few things that you remember loving doing as a child, and then try to implement those in your life today. And if you can go one step further, and if there's something on that list that you love, can you find a way to make money at it? To serve and to bring abundance into your life? Even if it's part-time, what can you do to come back to you to empower yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to add anything to that, because you've got me thinking now. I just jotted that down. What I jotted down was I have work to do. And that's what, but I love that. So, Jennifer, I appreciate it so much. We got through this without any hiccups, without any technical problems. And I just thought it was great. I just, so much. I'm going to have fun going back and listening to this again. And I'll just tell you what, you have an open invitation anytime. Come back on the podcast. If you got something you want to share, open invitation to come back. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim. It is such an honor to be here, to be a part of your MBS program. I am truly, truly honored. Thank you so much. I love all that you're doing and everything that you're doing to help and serve people around the world. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and we will talk later, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today, and if you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to review it at Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and you can find all of these podcasts on the MindBodySoul365.com website. And today I'll leave you with this verse, Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good, and pleasing, and perfect. And so till next time, stay safe, God bless, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Empowered Within with Jennifer Pilates. Your feedback is important. It helps me to connect with you and gives me insight into who you are and what you're enjoying about the show. For today's show notes and discount codes from today's sponsors, head over to jenniferpilates.com. Until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.